Hey there, it's Tobias here, and today I want to talk about the wonderful superpower, the philosophy and principle of simplicity, how you can use simplicity to scale your business. And I promise you, it does not get better than this. So let's dive in. First, let's explore the concept of simplicity, and let's kind of contrast it against why it's such a potent and powerful philosophy and a much underutilized and undervalued philosophy principle. You could even perhaps call it a strategy, if you will. And so let's start with the problem. So the problem that I mentioned, the problem of most companies, really go down to the root cause behind the symptoms, behind the pain that shows up in companies for owners, for any size business really, particularly a large business, but it applies equally to smaller ones, like I said. It's complexity. So most problems, not all, but most problems can be traced back to complexity. And complexity is like the silent killer of a business. And what I mean by that is, complexity kind of sneaks up on us like cancer. And the reason is that when we're trying to grow our businesses, we're trying to do more typically. Like that's the go-to mindset. It's not to do less, but it's actually to do more. And I'm going to show you why simplifying essentially is about achieving more, but with less. And so when we're trying to do more, we bring in, more weeds into our garden, or more fat around the muscle or the bones, if that works better for you as a metaphor. And so we do more things. Let's say we add a new segment. We are now trying to serve more customer types and different types of customers, which calls for more processes at the back end. Maybe we have more offerings because we want to grow. We bring in more people. We have more processes, et cetera, et cetera. Now, that's all great. And that's really how growth happens. The problem is when a big part of that excess, doesn't work as efficiently as it should. And what happens is complexity starts to lead to mediocrity. And mediocrity is like the worst place in business in our age, because, you can't be, as agile. You probably are going to be slower. You erode your profits, and that could lead to death. It's a dramatic word, but it's true. Mediocrity, comes from complexity, and complexity can kill a business. And so just to try to think of a more practical example, let's say you have a manufacturer of digital products like a Microsoft back in the day, and they created all these amazing software products. Let's be honest, they weren't super simple. So they weren't like probably the best to use, but they were probably the only ones in the marketplace. And maybe you remember when Apple was still like a cool growth company, or you probably don't remember that, but maybe someone does. I was just a child. Obviously, I'm super young, as you can tell. I'm 49. But I remember when Steve Jobs came back to Apple, I was in college. He came back to Apple in 1997. Maybe you've heard the story a million times, but it's just a great one. So what Steve Jobs famously did when he came back to Apple is he looked at all the projects they had going on. He looked at all the product models. He looked at all the client segments. He did basically an audit, which is what you do when you simplify the first step of it. And he killed most of the projects that they had going on, most of the offerings. He drew this 2x2 diagram famously where he kept only I think it was desktop and portable and just like a handful of products. He went all in on them. And imagine, Apple now competing with like only a few products versus the Dells, the Microsofts, and all the other manufacturers who had like these, thousands of SKUs, different models, different colors, like all of it. Maybe not different colors actually, but they had lots of different products. Now, what's the point with all of that? What he did essentially was he applied the 80-20 principle, whether he was aware of it or not, but that's what he did. And the 80-20 rule or principle or Pareto principle, what it says, as you probably know, about 80% of the profits of a company typically comes from about 20% of the customers. And, this applies to all walks of life, by the way. It's like always something like that. And you can, of course, take 80-20 principle multiple times. And then it's like, well, if 20% of customers provide 80% of the results, well, then that means 20% of 20%, which means 4% account for about 64%, and 0.8 accounts for like 51.5%. But that's not really important. But the idea is that a few things that are done really well will actually cause most of the results. Now, this is really important because when you simplify, the first thing you want to do is you want to identify where all the weeds are in your garden, or where's all the low performing stuff, and get rid of that and keep only the highest yielding stuff. The second thing you want to do is you want to design those, the vital few that you've separated from the trivial many. You want to design them and improve them. So let's say you simplify your value proposition and make it easier to understand. You make your headlines better. You make your landing page, whatever it is. You make your products more enjoyable to use, easier. You focus on fewer products so you have the resources to make them better. There are all these different things you can do to simplify on the front stage. And again, you just look at Apple today, even though they have plenty more products than they had, they still have only a fraction of the products that most of their competitors do have. But they are better, they're easier to use, people love them, the brand is stronger, the identity is stronger, their positioning is stronger. Everything about it really boosts the perceived value of their offering. Now, at the backstage of business, where we're talking processes, systems, operations, when you have fewer products, you maybe have fewer suppliers, you maybe have fewer people working inside, you have hopefully streamlined and designed your processes to make them simpler. And that also affects your company in a positive way. So on one hand, you're driving up your revenues and you're becoming more profitable at the front stage. At the backstage, you do the same thing because you can drive down costs. Now that creates kind of a double effect where your revenues go up and your costs go down, which gives you more leverage, and that means more profit. And so one of my favorite words is leverage, because that's what I'm always trying to seek for. When you simplify, you essentially seek higher leverage. Now, that's step number one, if you're still with me. So simplify. And the second thing you want to do before you grow, before you scale, is you want to systematize. You want to look at, okay, how do we turn these things that now work, that are beautifully designed, simple proposition and backend systems, focusing only on the most vital, highest yielding, the most profitable things about our business. Now, let's systematize. Let's build a simple operating system, unless you have one, which is, in my book, it's always about, three core processes that you need. And you need more. You need a management system if you're running a bigger company. But what you always need in every business is you need a process for generating leads. That's your marketing and sales. You need a process for sales conversion, so you can optimize leads and conversions. And that's going to be the way that you turn leads into sales. And that could be meeting with them and having a sales script and improving your sales skills. And it could be, improving your offering, your pricing, your terms. There's so many different things you can do to convert more leads into customers. The third process then is your value delivery system. And that's like, how do you deliver value, whether it's through a service or through a product, consistently at a profit so that you keep clients coming back for longer. Those are the three essential systems that you need. So I have plenty of videos out there where I talk about these things more in depth. I always talk about it because they relate directly to what I call the money equation, which brings me to the scale part, which is the third one. So the first one is simplify. The second is systematize. The third one is scale. And this is where it gets really funny. This is where it gets really exciting, but funny too. Why not? So we've simplified. So we've basically created leverage. So now we have the highest yielding stuff. That's, simplify for leverage. We build systems for efficiency so that we have something that we can scale, but also something that is, predictable and profitable. So we're setting ourselves up for success. Number three, scaling. And what does that really mean? Scaling essentially is different from growth in that when you grow, your costs do not grow in the same proportion as your sales. So that's really what the definition of scaling. So when we want to scale, what we want to do is we want to optimize what I call the money equation. In your business, there is an equation, whether you're aware of it or not, that actually dictates how you make money. You need to uncover it, and it has 6 core metrics. Like in reality, when we map these equations, there are actually more conversions and more steps. But the 6 core ones, also have videos where I talk about this more deeper than I will now, but they are your leads, how you convert leads into sales, how much people pay when they buy, so average transaction value, how many times they buy, so that's your retention, and then you have your margin, how much money you keep after you delivered, and then you have your operating expenses. These are the core 6 metrics. You should obsess about those. Now, the cool thing is, when you scale, essentially what you're trying to do is you are trying to increase these 6 metrics as much as you can with as low of a unit cost as possible. And so you throw in these different strategies and tactics into these 6 metrics, the money equation, and you can grow exponentially. Now I'm going to close this with an example, just so you can kind of start to ask yourself and kind of workshop this a little bit for yourself. What can you do to grow your business, to scale it up? And again, disclaimer, don't do it if you don't have a healthy, profitable core. That's why the first 2 steps are so important, because most business owners and people I work with, they want to go for growth. Of course, we all want to grow, but don't grow a cancer. Don't grow something that is not healthy and profitable at the core. So, okay, what can you do? Let's go back to the system that I talked about, because it relates to the money equation. And I know this could be confusing, but it's very, very simple. So we have this system. That's the stuff that we're doing on an ongoing basis that produces a specific result, and that result shows up in the money equation that we should be tracking. So, for example, we start with leads. How can I generate more leads than what I currently have? Now, there are many categories of things we can be doing. Let me just quickly go through them. So for example, if you're relying mostly on random referrals, like you get referrals here and there, but you don't have a structured referral system, that's a huge lost opportunity for you right now. If you don't know how to do that, you should reach out and I can help you with that. Let's say you don't have any partnerships in place, like structured partnerships. That could be either joint venture. It could be that you're co-marketing, co-pitching, co-branding. You are utilizing somebody else's email list, and in return for something you do for them. There are just a bunch of things you could be doing to leverage partnerships, let alone your organic content, paid media, direct outreach, etc. Those are kind of like the big categories. The second thing is, okay, how do we improve our conversion rate? Well, it really depends on where the problem lies, but there are a number of different things you can do. Why aren't clients converting? Let's say you're converting at 10% instead of 10% instead of maybe 20 or 30. It could be that your offering is too weak or too vague or too similar. Maybe you need to have a front-end offer that makes it easier for them to say yes before you sell them the big stuff. Maybe your terms are off. Maybe you need to provide a guarantee. Maybe you need to productize your service to make it simpler. There are all these different ways that you can improve it. Maybe you haven't really identified a proper sales process that includes you engaging, or your team engaging with people before, giving them materials up front. Maybe you don't have a structured sales process or sales script. Maybe you're not really good at having a sales conversation and closing people if you take live calls. And maybe you're not good at following up. Maybe you're not going back to past clients. Maybe you're not asking for referrals. There are all these small loopholes, and hopefully I'm demonstrating to you right now how many things, when you do them and when you put them together, they will compound, and it will lead you to have a significantly more profitable, high growth business. So we have the third process, and that is value delivery. Now, what can you do to improve your margin and retention, which are kind of like the core metrics of the third process here? So, well, you can have a better business model for one, which is you don't maybe do too much one-to-one work versus doing one-to-many, or you can automate. You can build, you can turn things into products. You can turn things into tools and templates, depending on your business. You can have a better process. You can teach people how to do the work more efficiently. You can outsource. You can insource. Again, there are so many different ways. You should have a process also for retaining people, for once they've, once you deliver the value that they bought, especially in the service business, you should upsell them. You could bundle, you could package, you could collaborate, you could find partners, have something to sell, which increases your retention rate, and that also increases hopefully your average transaction value, which will boost your profit line, your bottom line, your profits, exponentially. So I don't want to make this too long, but hopefully you see that by building this system, by first simplifying, then building this simple operating system, the SOS as I call it, and then optimizing, tweaking the results that you're getting, and in doing more of what is already working, not necessarily more things, but doing more, more volume, doing more of what already works, and improving that system all along. That's how you can grow any business on earth, and I promise. And if you don't believe me, book a call with me and I'll explain exactly how you can triple your revenue or 10x your revenue through this system. And I promise we'll do an exercise together and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Now, the final thing I want to say is growing your profits is actually a lot easier than growing your revenue. You can just by optimizing without growing your revenue, you could probably double or triple your profits just because your business is probably not fully optimized. It's probably sub-optimized in some way. And that's why we start by simplifying, prioritizing, and all this stuff that I already talked to you about. If you're still here and you enjoyed this, make sure that you hit the links below. You could book a call with me. We can talk about your business and most importantly, how we can exponentially grow your profits. Thanks so much. And I'll be back with more valuable stuff soon.